Hello and welcome to Revel Coach Plus. I am Allison Nissen, a co-host, along with my sister, Marcy Stout. We started Revel Coach almost 4 years ago. It has been quite a journey. We are so excited that you are here with us. But I have a real important question for everyone. Do you know what your passions are? Do you know what the possibilities are? And do you have the habits to actually have the passion and the possibilities come together? Because if you need help with that, we are so excited to introduce you to Patty Franco, who is going to help us figure just that out. So Patty, welcome to Revel Coach Plus.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
What can you tell us about creating habits? I'm looking at my desk right now and I've got these like piles of things, and I'm thinking if I just could have a habit of putting everything away before I left the office in the evening, my life would probably be a little better.
Well, actually, you framed it very well, so thank you for that. I think it's really about identifying what the upside and the benefit to you is, and then allowing yourself to really see the value of that. So it's worth that extra 1 or 2 minutes at the end of the day to organize things. In fact, one of my habits is I pack everything up every night before I leave, or at the end of the day when I stop my work day. I have folders, I slide papers into folders, and I tuck them in my bag if I'm going to travel tomorrow, or I put them in a drawer so that I feel this sense of completion and this sense of clearing before I shift to mom mode and house mode. So it's really, and it serves me. So, and then if you reflect on those things, if you're into journaling, or if you just can capture the benefit of that, then it motivates you to do it again.
I can totally see that being effective, especially with all of us working from home. Often it kind of bleeds into different rooms and 1 hour becomes the next hour. So I love that. So you physically just kind of say, my day is over, and then you pack everything up. Do you put it away? Like, is it computer and everything?
It's either a way, if I'm going to be here in the morning back at the same space, it's in a drawer. If I'm going to my co-working office, it goes into my laptop bag, my backpack, so that in the morning, all I have to do is take my bag. So I don't have to, I'm already tied up with making sure my children have what they need. I don't need more complexity in the morning. So my bag is just ready to go. So I grab it, I get in my car and I go. So I try to make it mindless, because I'm not a morning person.
It sounds so simple. And it's one of those things like, it's the right thing to do, but some of us, we kind of don't create those good habits. And I'd love to, start this conversation with learning a little bit more about your work, and potentially you can share, you were sharing before the show, one of your programs that you're launching. I know you do a few different things, but maybe highlight how you work with your clients, and maybe start with the upcoming program you have.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm an executive coach, and I work with leaders typically at the director level and above, or business owners of, small, medium-sized businesses. And my niche is working with executives or leaders who are also parents, because I can relate to their pain points and their struggles. And I have a lot of insights and growth that I've developed over the years in that space. So I work with men and women who are leaders and also parents. And one of the core programs that I offer, and I have this built into my coaching process, whether I work with someone one-on-one, which I have a lot of one-on-one clients, and then to accelerate things, I'm very big into accelerating results and having an impact for the clients that I serve. I created this boot camp called Mental Fitness Boot Camp, which is about the root cause of all of our stress and burnout in life is because of the way that we either navigate stress well or don't navigate stress well in certain moments. And we have moments when we do it well and moments when we don't. But I've gone through a certification process as a coach, and I now offer this as a service offering where I teach the basics of how to develop your mental fitness, which is at the root of your emotional intelligence. And essentially, mental fitness is the ability to navigate stress with more ease and flow. So it's shifting your negative thoughts and emotions to more positive thoughts and emotions, or ones that serve you better. So you get a disappointment, a client rejects you, or something happens that can then trigger that self-doubt. It can send us down the rabbit hole of like, am I good enough? Do I need to get more certifications, or what's wrong with me? What do I need to do differently? Is not really the right series of conversations to conduct. It's, what did I learn from this? How can I grow from this? What do I need to do differently? How does it inform my way forward? And that's using your mental fitness and working from your sage brain versus your saboteur brain. So in the program, I teach you about your saboteur thinking, your sage thinking, how to make decisions, and how to have habits to help you navigate your days when you're triggered by stress. So I have that program coming up at the end of September, and I'm really excited. It's a very small, intimate group of 6 people, and I have just a few spots left. So very excited about that.
So, Patty, when we think about going down that rabbit hole and changing our thought process, do you actually encourage replacement thinking, or is it like question thinking? So instead of saying this is such a bad thing, this is such a bad thing, I should say, what can I learn from it? What can I learn from it? Or is it more like, I would say, what can I learn from it? Where will I go next? Like with a series of questions instead of just replacing 1 or 2 words.
Right. No, it's definitely not replacement. It's almost like acknowledgement. So it's bringing it into the awareness that I am in a mode of being triggered right now. I'm being triggered by my emotions to think or feel something negative. And we call it putting your hand on the hot stove. So it's like the proverbial version of putting your hand on the hot stove. And so if you literally put your hand on a hot stove, what do you normally do?
Yeah, lift it off.
You take it off. Right, right, because your pain receptors are like, whoa, that was intense, take it away. But we don't do that emotionally. We tend to, we get triggered into anger, upset, frustration, all of these negative things, and we leave our hand, mentally on the hot stove of negative thinking and being. So it's first, acknowledging like, whoa, I'm having a moment here. So it's acknowledgement, bringing it into your awareness, and then it's choosing a different action or deciding to ask yourself questions. So you basically have 2 options when you're triggered by stress or negativity. It's accept the situation for what it is, or convert it to something else, something better. And that's the learning part. Like, what can I learn? What can I do differently?
That's great. And when you're working with these small groups, so I think you have, they're not all in the same industry. So you have different members that are from different industries, but all kind of entrepreneurs and primarily all parents. How do you find they uncover their own patterns, like their level of self-discovery as they're working with the group?
Sure, it's designed so that there's a series of modules that draws that out, as well as what I really love is that there is an app that they can use on their phone. So majority of the work is done offline and it's self-directed. So every day they're being fed these little exercises, these thought-provoking exercises and activities to do to develop habits that help you shift throughout the day. So instead of going through your day, blindly, not realizing like you're triggered by this, triggered by that, you preempt it basically and say, okay, what might happen today that's going to probably be confronting me or compromising me in some way, and what's my strategy going to be? And then there's many exercises people can do throughout the day. There's like a mental fitness gym. It's like there's so much complexity to it but it's actually very simple, and it gives them a tool. It's almost like having your coach in your pocket all day long, all week long, and they interact with it again at their pace. And then we come together once a week to discuss and unpack everything together.
And was this all a part of, you mentioned you got certified to do this type of training. Was this a part of that certification, or is this an app you found for your practice?
No, I was invited in to attend as a coach in training, and I took full advantage of it because it was very much in alignment with my core certification to become a certified coach, which is all based on energy work, like energy leadership work. So I felt that, this really gets to the root of how we show up and how we're being, because, how you can be powerful and successful and effective in life is all about, it's not about the doing, it's about how you're being. So am I being inspirational? Am I being positive? Am I being negative? It's about how you're being in your core. So this was something that I went through as a coach training program, and it was transformational for me as a woman, as a mom, as a coach. And that's when I said, no, I need to bring this to my clients so that they can benefit similarly.
So how do you translate all of this into being a parent? So, my kids are older, but I can remember struggles. They had some buttons they could push on me, and I'm sure I pushed plenty on them. So how can it strengthen that parent-child relationship?
It's great, and it's very subtle, so I have to be careful with my children not to be in teaching mode or coaching mode with them, because they're smart. They're 9 and 12, and they pick up on it immediately. They're like, "Don't coach me, I'm not your client," you know. And I'm like, "You're right." But I try to help them when they get, so if something comes up, like let's say my 9-year-old has a tiff with one of her friends, and she's like, you know, she was mean to me, and you know, she's in an upset mode. I try to help her see, and I ask her questions like, you know, A, do you think she meant to hurt your feelings? You know, so trying to putting herself in the other person's shoe. But B, how are you feeling right now? Well, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm, you know, mad at her, you know, whatever the case may be. And she does understand the difference between your saboteur brain and your sage brain, because she's heard me talk to my clients, you know, about it and do some trainings about it. So I'll say, you know, is that how you really feel all the time, you know, or is that sort of like just because you're upset? And so I help her see that like it's a moment in time, and that's your upset mode, which is we call your saboteur brain, which looks at people through the lens of judgment or criticism, or looks at yourself through the lens of judgment and criticism. So I'm like, is that your saboteur brain, or is that your sage brain, which is your wisest self? And she's like, that's my saboteur brain. And I even have a doll or a puppet that I use. And I'm like, I don't know if you can see it on the screen here. I'm like, are you in this mode, the happy baby Yoda, or are you in this mode, the grumpy, you know, grouchy, you know, like which one are you? And then I say, so how do we get you back to this one? You know, so with younger kids, you can use props like this. It's really fun. In fact, but I do use it with my adult clients as well, you know, in a more, you know, a more mature way. But I mean, that's back to basics. It's just looking in the mirror, like, are you in this mode or this mode? And which one do you want to be in? And how do we help you get there? You know, how do you give that person love and grace and forgiveness and acceptance so you can get back to being friends and get back to your joy?
Mm-hmm. That's so good. I love the simplicity of how you do it. I mean, the puppet itself, I know that that's a tool that, you know, psychologists use and things like that, but it is really simple, especially with kids, because then a lot of times they have a negative reaction to the parental voice because they've heard it before. But when it's just a quick visual, you know, they can see that.
And in fact, one of my investment banking clients, who is like, you know, in a very senior role, he went out and bought that puppet. Like, that's brilliant.
And everybody knows what mood I'm in before you go in the office.
Exactly. Yeah. His wife is like, oh gosh, I'm not talking to you today. You just lost a deal. Right? You're in saboteur mode. But no, he knows not to stay there. You know, when you look at that puppet and you're like, how ridiculous is it that I'm going to stay upset? Even if it is something very high stakes, you can't make your best decision and show up as a good leader if you are what we call mentally hijacked, you know, and you have your hand on the proverbial hot stove. So it's how fast can we help you get your hand off the hot stove so you can think clearly? And there's all these mindfulness and meditative exercises that we build into that to help you get grounded so you can be your best self. That's what it's all about.
I think it's a fun, very quick way of being able to look in the mirror, like you mentioned. And I know, you know, when I don't get enough sleep, for example, I am in that green Yoda mode, and, you know, and I feel bad for all the people around me, because I'm like, I didn't have enough sleep. I'm so sorry. I'm tired, you know.
But you've already hurt their feelings, so it's too late. Yeah.
What's wrong with you? No, but it would be, it's a great way for someone to get out of their own head, right? Mm-hmm. Because we get looped in, and we're stuck in that cycle, and it just keeps looping around and around and around. And then when you can be like, oh yeah, wait, no, I'm over here. I'm so sorry. I gotta go back. You know, I do appreciate that. I think I should go out and buy one of those too, maybe.
But then again, I am your sister and your business partner. I know when you didn't get enough sleep. You don't really need to show me a puppet.
No, but I can teach you these other techniques where you do stuff to get out of your head and into your body, and you literally do them for 2 minutes at a time, and it's all sensory based. So that actually literally triggers different hormones in your brain to calm down and get centered, and it doesn't take a lot of time, and you don't have to go into a dark room and meditate for 30 minutes. It's actually very doable and applicable to any person's life. So it's like I said, it's been a game changer.
Any favorite examples of what you'd like to? So if somebody recognizes they're on the wrong side of the puppet, and they want to do, you know, some sort of technique before their next meeting and kind of wash themselves clean of that. Yeah. Any favorite techniques?
Sure. If you put your hands together, if you both want to do it with me, and just rub your hands together like you're warming them up. And you can do it with eyes open or eyes closed if you are by yourself and you want to do that. And just get really present to how that feels. So you feel the texture of your skin, the warmth of your body, it's soothing. And just get really present to that. And if you do that for a full, at least 30 seconds, but ideally 2 minutes. And then all of a sudden, how do you feel?
I don't feel like we're on record anymore.
Exactly. And you could even be on a Zoom call.
You could sense it right away.
You can also do this below the camera. So if somebody's on a call and they're, it's something where it's triggering, or your brain just gets distracted and you're thinking about your grocery list and you want to get present again, you can do it with 2 fingers, and it can be right underneath the desk, under the camera. Sometimes I'm in line at the grocery store and I'm getting frustrated because it's taking too long, and I'm like, okay, stop judging them, Patty. Just go into positive intelligence mode. And I do this and it gets me centered. So 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes max.
Well, I love the way this business is going, the art of the psychology and understanding the brain, and how it is getting so mainstream, because the brain waves, as they get to a less stressed state, less fight or flight state, people really can accomplish more and they can think more. But our busy state has gotten everybody to stay in this fight or flight mode. Mm-hmm. And so then it just takes you twice as long to think of the right solution, because you're at an elevated emotion. So I love what you're doing. May I ask? Okay, so a lot of people, you mentioned you work with like an investment banker. And so for some people, this is, they might be hiring you for business results, like you're a business coach and they want revenue, they want clients, they want the habits to get clients. And then when you teach techniques like this, how do you, what's kind of your way to get them on board? Is it through showing them how it works, or is it, how do you help people understand?
Well, people tend to refer people to me because they've worked with me and they see the value, which, is true for most coaches out there, or all of us to some extent. And so I always do, like most people as well, a complimentary session, a discovery session, whatever you want to call it, where I just listen and hear what their pain points are and really take that all in, and then get clarity on what they're trying to shift and why. And then I help them see that there's a few different ways we can work together. So yes, I can help someone walk through the high level creation of a business plan, or, whatever type of concrete action steps they're looking to take. But really what's going to have them implement it is going to be their commitment and their clarity and how they're being. So it's always going to come back to their positive and emotional intelligence skills. And so I always tell them, I will work with you on both tracks, the how-to track if you want that, because that's really more consulting, that's not coaching, but if they want consulting, because I do have a fair amount of business experience, I've run my own brick and mortar, I've had multiple businesses, and I've been in the corporate world. So I can give advice, but I can guide you down the road to creating your plans, but I will also coach you on how to be your best self, as long as they're open to that. So I set them up that way for success. So that's why one of my biggest pet peeves in the world of coaching is when people are like, well, I need someone who's been a marketing person for 15 years, or have, they've been in construction, and they kind of box you into this thing. And I'm like, well, do you want someone who's a subject matter expert in exactly what you do? Or do you want someone who can help you be your best self? And that's not necessarily tied to industry specific. So I think once people realize that, then it allows them to work with coaches who may have a very different approach than what they're used to, and they're pleasantly surprised at the results.
Mm-hmm. It's almost as, a lot of times people go to the doctor with a symptom and they want a cure for the symptom, and a simple level would be a headache, but really underneath it's maybe stress management or sleep or water, hydration. And so if they're coming for just the specific ailment, like the business plan review or the resume update or something like that, you can get a technician for that. You can get a bottle of aspirin for that. But if you really want long lasting results, having somebody can help them, preventative, to that, it's kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely, because there's essentially 10 different ways that we self-sabotage, and controlling is one of them, perfectionism is another, and that resonates for most people in leadership roles, and they're usually like, yep, I'm a controller, yes, I'm a perfectionist, or I'm an avoider. That's another sabotage style, and a lot of people out there are procrastinators, and they know it, and so it's recognizing how you self-sabotage, and then applying all these concepts so that you can overcome that.
Pat,
So, oh, go ahead, Allison.
no, I was gonna say you have a very varied background. You said you had a brick and mortar store, and you've been in the corporate world, and you've done all sorts of coaching and had your own business. You mentioned you started with energy work. What was that? How did you get onto that track?
Sure. So I went to the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. It's always a mouthful. IPEC, which is one of the top 3 international coach certification programs. And their framework is called Energy Leadership Coaching. And it's all about anabolic and catabolic energy, which is, again, very similar and very intertwined with positive intelligence work, where you evaluate yourself on a scale of 1 to 7 levels of increasingly more productive energy. So it's, when you're most creative and most effective and most influential as a human being is when you're operating from your highest energy capability, meaning you're not hijacked mentally by negative thoughts and emotions. You're able to synergize and collaborate with other people. And when we're in conflict mode or victim mode, let's say, which are the lower levels, you're not your most effective self. So it's all based on that level of awareness of how we show up as human beings and how it's getting in our way or not in terms of any of our successes in any realm. So I learned that model, the 7 levels of leadership energy, and how to apply it to the coaching that I do with leaders. And then I was introduced to positive intelligence, and it seemed to, be a nice complement to that certification. So those are the 2 that I've gone through in depthly, and the only 2 that I plan to, because I think, keeping your focus and honing it over time is important rather than bouncing.
I can see that. So I'd love to ask you a question. When, we started a little bit about your business, and we have this one program, and then you shared a lot more about what you do, even the consulting stuff. But what's your vision for what's next, or how do you describe, where you're headed for the future?
Sure. So I'm really headed towards working with even higher level senior leaders in organizations who have great levels of influence to all the leaders under them. And I remember back from my HR days, that was one of my biggest things that always kept me up at night, for lack of a better way to put it, was just all the angst that middle level managers went through, and, some of the gap in understanding and awareness between senior leadership and middle management. So as I continue to grow my business, I'm working with VPs, SVPs, presidents, partners in firms and whatnot. And they are now starting to see the value of the work that I do and asking me, could you coach my direct reports? Could you come in and do a workshop on positive intelligence? And so I'm looking to scale by really going deep in organizations where the leader is fully bought in and sees the value of investing in their people in this very different way. Because most leaders usually say, oh, let's do a training here and there, and hopefully something will stick. But usually it's temporary or it doesn't stick. And this is the type of work that, if you invest in it, but you go through it first, you emulate it, you can articulate it, you're the champion. That's the formula for success for culture change, I believe. And that's what we were always trying to achieve in all my big jobs in corporate. And it was always very hard nut to crack. So I'm trying to go at it, very specifically there.
That's great. And then talk about great referrals. When you say referrals in your business, if the referral is your boss, who also might be paying the bill, that is like the best.
Right. There's no better. In fact, one company that I started with, I was coaching 4 or 5 of their sales leaders. And in the last 2 years, it's grown to about 20. So it's just kind of, had this ripple effect. So I'm looking to continue to duplicate that with leaders who value this type of work and get, the transformational difference it can make.
That's wonderful. And then another question we love to ask is around personal growth. Is there anything, I know you mentioned this certification, I know the first one you've had for a while, the other one slightly more recent, but is there anything that you find is something that you're passionate about learning and growing?
In terms of learning and growing, it's really honestly with the positive intelligence and mental fitness work, it's just there's always a deeper level, so it's the getting to the next level of self-mastery. And that's just through keeping myself on track. So I have a group of other coaches that I work with. We've formed a little pod and we meet twice a month and we coach each other on the use of the mental fitness techniques and also how to bring it to market with our clients and all of that. But also just, I'm also working with someone on writing so that I can, eventually be on the road to writing a book. I'm not sure exactly in what direction I want to take that, but for now, just writing thought-provoking articles that will, again, be very timely for things that people are dealing with in the corporate world as well as running the business. So writing, inner work, and then, traveling, on the personal level, just now that the pandemic is been winding down and we have more freedom and flexibility, just getting out there more, and especially seeing people overseas that I haven't seen in a while.
How exciting. How exciting. Yes. And, we are so glad that you've been able to join us and that we can celebrate your journey, because I just learning the few little things, a little, tactile touches that can help you calm down, refocus, reframe. I think that's just, such simple techniques, and yet it is something that we can take with us anywhere, because where my hands are, I am.
Right.
So fantastic.
Right. You don't really need to make it complicated. It's true. Like you could be on a walk and just by yourself and really staring at the trees or the horizon but studying it. When you actually study nature, you get present. It's all about getting present and doing it more frequently, and then you reap all of the benefits physiologically and mentally.
The other thing that's really interesting as you were talking, it's like you really help executives or business owners just get really conscientious of things that they typically go unconscious of. So they might not recognize that they're doing certain things. Like as you're talking with your daughter, she's just venting to her mom after school, but you're getting her very aware of, how are you feeling? Do you think she meant to do this? So getting very aware is, the first step of
it is
change. That's so great. So if somebody wanted to work with you or learn more about your program or anything like that, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. The easiest is just go to pattyfranco.com and there's a contact me button and they can send an email from there. I also am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and they can message me there as well, Patty Franco Coaching on all of those channels. And just say, hey, I would like to get together with you for, an introductory call or meeting. And then I just listen and see how I can help.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Patty, for being with us. We really enjoyed this conversation. I love the work that you do. I think it's so helpful for people that are in business and parents and juggling a lot, but there still is always time to be present. So I want to thank you for being here on behalf of my sister, Allison, and I. We hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you both. Appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
Bye.